This story begins in a town that believed nothing bad ever really happened there. Briar Ridge, Missouri was the kind of place where days followed predictable patterns. People woke up early, went to work, came home tired, and slept with their windows slightly open in the summer. Neighbors waved at each other. Kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. Police cars rolled through town more as a sign of familiarity than authority. Nothing ever felt urgent in Briar Ridge. Nothing ever felt dangerous. That's why when Marcus Hill didn't come home one night, no one immediately thought something terrible had happened. Marcus was 32 years old, an electrician who had lived in Briar Ridge his entire life. He was quiet, dependable, and known for helping people without asking for much in return. On the night he disappeared, Marcus had finished a late repair job just outside town. At 10:46 p.m., he called his girlfriend to tell her he was on his way home. His voice sounded normal. Tired, maybe, but calm. That call ended and Marcus was never heard from again. The next morning, his truck was found parked neatly on the side of a rural road just a few miles from town. The keys were still in the ignition, the doors were unlocked. There were no skid marks, no broken glass, no sign that anything violent had happened. It looked as if Marcus had simply stepped out of his truck for a moment and never returned. Police called it unusual, but they didn't call it urgent. They suggested Marcus might have walked away on his own, maybe to clear his head. Within days, the investigation slowed. Within weeks, it was quietly pushed aside. Life in Briar Ridge went on. A few months later, Denise Rowe didn't come home from work. Denise was a single mother raising 2 children on her own. She worked long overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse outside town. She was exhausted most of the time, but she never failed to check in with her kids. On the night she disappeared, Denise clocked out just before midnight. Security cameras showed her walking across the parking lot and getting into her car. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. Her car was found the next afternoon in a grocery store parking lot. It was unlocked. Her purse was still inside, but her phone was gone. Police told her family that stress can cause people to make sudden decisions. They suggested Denise might have left voluntarily, even though she had never shown signs of wanting to abandon her children. No major search followed, no public outcry. Denise became another quiet absence. Then came Caleb Turner. Caleb was 17 years old, a good student with plans for college. One Saturday afternoon, he went hunting alone, something he had done many times before. He told his parents he'd be home before dark. He wasn't. Search teams later found his rifle leaning against a tree and his backpack untouched nearby. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away. Police ruled it a runaway case. But people don't usually run away without their belongings. They don't leave behind everything they need to survive. Still, no one challenged the conclusion openly. By now, something subtle had changed in Briar Ridge. People began locking their doors earlier. Parents checked in more often. Conversations lowered when certain topics came up. Fear didn't arrive loudly. It settled in quietly. Then, Emily Carter disappeared. Emily was 19 years old and worked nights at a gas station just outside town. She was saving money for community college and talked often about leaving Briar Ridge someday. On the night she vanished, security footage showed Emily locking the station door at 10:17 p.m. She turned, waved at a passing vehicle, and walked toward her car. She never made it inside. Her parents reported her missing the next morning. Police asked them to wait, saying Emily was an adult and might return on her own. Days passed, then weeks. Emily didn't come back. As her family pressed for answers, they noticed something unsettling. Police reports were thin. Details didn't line up. Questions were met with irritation instead of concern. It didn't feel like the case was going cold. It felt like it was being pushed away. That's when Officer Daniel Reyes began to notice that something wasn't right. Reyes was new to Briar Ridge, transferred from another state. He didn't grow up there. He wasn't related to anyone on the force. He still believed policing was about protecting people. When he reviewed Emily's file, it felt incomplete. Witness statements were missing. Dispatch logs didn't match patrol records. Curious, Reyes pulled older missing persons files. The same problems appeared again and again. And then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. Every missing person had been pulled over by police within months before disappearing. Routine traffic stops, no tickets, no arrests, just contact. When Reyes raised concerns with his superiors, he was warned to stop asking questions. "This town doesn't dig," he was told. Reyes didn't stop. 2 days later, he was suspended. The same night, his tires were slashed. That was when he understood the truth. The disappearances weren't being ignored. They were being protected. With no one else to turn to, Reyes contacted the FBI. At first, federal agents weren't interested. There were no bodies, no clear federal crime. But Reyes kept pushing. He sent documents, altered reports, and finally, 3 names. Those names appeared in every case. That was enough. The arrests shook Briar Ridge to its core. 3 men in uniform, men people trusted with their safety, were suddenly the subject of headlines, whispered conversations, and fear. Some neighbors refused to leave their homes. Others watched silently from windows, afraid to speak. The town had spent so long pretending everything was normal, it had never learned how to process truth. Inside the courtrooms, the atmosphere was heavy. Families of the missing sat in silence, waiting for answers. Some wore the same clothes they had worn at vigils years earlier. Their eyes were dry, their hands clenched, the weight of time and uncertainty pressed down on everyone present. The officers faced charges that shocked even seasoned prosecutors: conspiracy, kidnapping, extortion, multiple counts of obstruction of justice. And yet for every answer the trial provided, more questions lingered. During testimony, a pattern emerged. The officers had chosen their victims carefully. They targeted people who had few protections, who wouldn't be noticed if they disappeared. They made it look like coincidence. They used fear to control, and when anyone tried to resist, they vanished. One of the officers, during cross-examination, admitted to everything with a cold, almost casual detachment. He spoke about the missing people as if they were objects, as if their lives and families were irrelevant. His words sent shivers through the courtroom. Another officer, when pressed about why the local police hadn't acted sooner, simply shrugged. "We didn't think anyone would notice," he said. "It's a small town. People leave all the time." Small town, that phrase echoed throughout the proceedings. A town where appearances mattered more than truth, where loyalty to colleagues outweighed morality, where fear dictated silence. Outside the courthouse, residents whispered about the sheer scale of betrayal. How could the people sworn to protect them do this? How could they hide it for so long? But the most chilling truth wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the quiet spaces between the revelations. Briar Ridge had become a town that survived by looking the other way, that tolerated danger because it felt distant, and for years the people who disappeared were simply forgotten. Even after the convictions, that silence lingered. Some streets remained empty, some houses never reopened. Parents kept their children close. Doors were locked at times that they never had been before. The FBI eventually left, leaving behind files, evidence, and survivors who would carry the trauma for the rest of their lives. But the lessons of Briar Ridge were permanent. Evil, it turns out, doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with noise, with chaos, with the kind of visible threat people expect. Sometimes it comes slowly, quietly, with a uniform, with a smile, with routine. And sometimes it hides in plain sight, in a town that thinks it knows everyone, but knows nothing. Daniel Reyes, the officer who refused to look away, left Briar Ridge for good. He carried the burden of what he discovered and the knowledge that some things could never be undone. But he also carried the proof that even in a town built on silence, persistence could uncover the truth. As for Briar Ridge, the scars remain. Families still grieve. Children still grow up under a shadow. And the memory of the officers who betrayed their duty is something the town will never forget. Because in towns like this, silence never truly goes away. It waits, it watches, and it reminds everyone that appearances can be deceiving. And that's the story of Briar Ridge, a town that seemed quiet and safe, a town hid horrible secrets for years, a town that finally learned the cost of looking the other way. Sometimes the worst crimes are not the ones we hear about in the news. Sometimes the worst crimes are the ones that hide quietly until someone finally dares to look.